we'll go straight into it. There's no point doing any introductions or anything like that to anyone because exactly the same crew as last week. Obviously, you know Meta Goblin, you know Fake QT. Quick rundown, obviously Meta Goblin, content creator on YouTube for pretty much everything World of Warcraft. Fake QT, predominantly content creation for TBC, obviously getting ready. So his channel, very much like mine, is really orientated all around TBC and the information that you're going to need from, attunements to, quests that you don't want to miss, leveling guides, all that sort of thing. Obviously, Meta Goblin's also doing loads of leveling guides at the moment from 60 to 70 for every class. So obviously go on his YouTube channel and check those out. But we're gonna just literally take about 10 minutes, and I am going to be quite strict on the timing, so I'm going to be looking from when we go from each class to the other, and we're just going to have a brief conversation around each class, strong points, not so strong points, whether they're going to be required in PvE, PvP. We've done sort of a rating system last week live on the channel as well, where we was looking at, where we would physically put them, whether an S tier or a D tier. Turned out fairly good, but I think now we can dive into each class a little bit deeper, see, it might help you decide what you want as your main in TBC. So we're going to start with a warrior, and I don't want to sort of lead the conversation too much. So I don't know, like Meta, Fake QT, have either of you played much warrior? Because I'm not going to lie, my experience with warrior in TBC is quite low.
Yeah, same.
And the same for me, yeah.
All right. So we know about them at the end of the day, but none of us has like mained one or anything like that. So I've done this for each class. So on screen you'll see we've got like the new talents, how the talents will look in TBC, and then I've just put a few new abilities, or between 1 and 3 new abilities for each class, just if we wanted to focus on any of those. But what sort of your general thoughts from let's start as a PvE perspective first, and we'll start with you, Fake QT. What would your sort of gut feeling on usefulness in PvE for warriors in TBC?
I mean, yeah, we can see they have a spell reflect, which they get in TBC, and in PvE, I think it's really useful because like there's gonna be some mechanics where the boss or the monsters you have to kill in the dungeon is gonna cast at you, and having spell reflect is gonna be a lifesaver once in a while. Commanding shout as well, which is really good, I would say. Let me see. Yeah, that's like the 2 major things you really get in TBC compared to Classic.
Yeah, it's not.
And of course,
it's
you get
more
the
your.
as well. Yeah.
It's more sort of like what. So I've put these on the screen so people can just see the differences in talents, and obviously, yeah, some of the abilities that are worth talking about. Like you said, obviously, spell reflect, very very good. Got lots of uses in PvP, PvE. But obviously, with your raiding, I mean, Meta Goblin. Obviously, I've seen you raiding, so maybe we'll move over to you just for a couple of minutes. What's the representation of warriors? What's their usefulness in raids that you see? We're talking purely PvE at the moment. Out of all the warriors out there in Classic at the moment, how easy of a time are they going to have in TBC, do you think?
Well, I'd say like in early TBC, they're pretty mandatory as a main tank. And that's mainly because like a lot of tanks, when you're jumping into TBC, they're not going to have like 100% avoidance. So you kind of have to rely on, obviously, all the cool warrior cooldowns that they have, and obviously the other tanks don't really have much in terms of cooldowns. I guess I feel like the go-to main tank early TBC, but then like later on, the other tanks kind of seem to like get a bit more powerful when they get like, because what's weird is that the protection paladin can actually get avoidance capped easier than a warrior, well, slightly anyway. And yeah, apart from that, when it comes, that's obviously the tank. Then the main at PvE spec is obviously Fury, 2-handed, 1-handed weapons. Don't get Titan's Grip yet. And then Arms isn't really used that much in PvE. It is more of a PvP dominant spec, but you will bring. So some people like to bring like 1 Arms warrior to the raid because of. I think the talent is something that is called like Exposed Weakness. I do have a talent calculator open here. I should probably check. But basically, there's this like ability that really massively boosts all the damage of the hunters. Let me check what it's called.
Yeah, it's the 4% physical damage.
Yeah, so like I can't remember what the talent's called. I'm trying to find it.
Is it Blood? It's the one that's on the left-hand side of Mortal Strike.
Blood Frenzy. Yeah. Oh, it's only melee damage. Well, maybe I'm chatting nonsense then, but I just know that talent is like sometimes brought because it's kind of moderately useful by boosting the damage of a raid, and sometimes, like, say for instance, you jump into a raid and a really big fat two-handed weapon drops, but like all the one-handed weapons don't drop, all the one-handed weapons get given to a rogue, then it is normally better to just go arm spec, put on a big fat two-handed weapon rather than going Fury. But that's the only niche time where you really see arms, because Fury is like the more of the king spec in the whole TBC, particularly when you get Warglaives and things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not the difference between arms and Fury is actually minimal. It is quite minimal, but it is, like you were saying with Blood Frenzy, the 4% physical damage. You know, you multiply that by all your hunters and hunters' pets and everything, because I'm pretty sure it's not melee. I'm pretty sure it is actual physical, all physical damage. So now, you know, that then gives more reason. There's not much reason to take a DPS warrior full stop. So they need a reason to be there, because obviously why take a warrior when you can take a warlock or a hunter, you know, someone who's going to do big damage. But if you're now buffing those hunters' damage and their pets' damage by 4%, now there's a reason to have someone there. And because it's not party-wide like most of the buffs, you know, this is just, they put it on the boss and everybody's going to benefit from it, including tanks. So now it's increasing tanks' threat as well, which, you know, is another thing that probably goes under the radar a little bit. And I agree with what you said, Fury, there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to need to be a mindset change for warriors in TBC, where at the moment everybody's Fury. And yeah, I would probably say Fury probably will do slightly more damage than an arms warrior, but like they don't bring as much as that big 4% physical damage. But I'm glad you mentioned, you know, about DPS, tanks versus DPS as warriors, because yeah, tanks, like prot warriors, kings. They are really strong. There's certain fights where they make things a lot easier. You know, like for Gruul, you really want a prot warrior main tanking it. But then DPS warriors, there's not that much reason to bring them, which is what we looked at in a video that we done last week. Well, Fake QT, I mean, what's your experience with seeing warriors in raids, like performance-wise and everything like that?
I mean, every time I'm raiding in TBC, we always use a warrior as main tank. But like for 5-man dungeon in the beginning, I usually go with a Paladin because I play Mage, so for AoE. But like usually warrior is gonna be the main tank. Or like a Druid is also pretty good, but like warrior is most of the time the main tank. But yeah, as you said, Fury and arms, you're gonna have a hard time to actually get a raid spot. It's not gonna be the same way as in Classic, where you have 10 warriors. It's gonna be exact same like mages in TBC. It's gonna be maybe 1 or 2 spots if you're really lucky.
Yeah, so an interesting comment in chat from Sneaky Monkey 3, is Fury tanking a thing in TBC? Now, I personally haven't seen it, and I personally don't think it will be a thing, purely because, you know, you need to, the boss is going to hit a lot harder. You need to get, you know, crushing blow, immune to them as much as possible, crit immune and all of that. I think defensively it's not an offensive threat fight anymore in TBC compared to Classic.
I mean, every time we are fresh and we hit 70, people always have to spec prot. It's not like you can go as a Fury. You can probably for normal dungeons, but the moment you step into raiding or heroics, you simply have to be prot, because you're gonna struggle too much with the threat and your survivability if you go as a Fury. It's not gonna work like in Classic, I would say. But it depends, because there's always difference between private servers and the actual shit. So we don't know if the damage is properly on private servers, and if it's gonna be easier in a Classic TBC. We will have to wait and see. But like, if you compare it to private servers, you have to be prot. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was a bit like with Classic. We weren't quite expecting the ridiculously low armor values and HP values of the bosses and stuff like that, you know, burning them down in 30 seconds. Obviously, we don't know what's going to come, do we? But, you know, an average fight in TBC, even going from Karazhan all the way up to Sunwell Plateau, you're still looking at a good 4 to 5 minutes as an average for a boss. Or in my experience, that's what most of them look like on private servers. But what about... So PvP, again, I'm quite open with everyone. I'm not a big PvPer, particularly on a warrior, but just doing research for this, they are super competitive as they are all the way through, from Classic all the way to BFA. They're always a good PvP class, but what's your guys? So Meta, like, what's your thoughts on warrior PvP? Mainly arenas. We want to focus on arenas.
Yeah, well, what makes them so strong is Storm Herald, that big two-handed weapon. It's like 3.8 weapon speed. And obviously skills of all their abilities makes them do huge damage, and also you have that really cheeky 4-second stun that has a chance to proc on Storm Herald, which is really, really useful. So yeah, that's the main reason why they're so strong, because it's Mace specialization, talent, and Storm Herald. And that's pretty much all I know about it, though. I know that's the main reason why they're so strong.
Yeah, definitely, and it's the same with Paladins. I mean, Fake, obviously you do more PvP than probably me and Meta, so what are your thoughts on warriors in PvP?
If you want to go really high, just play with a Resto Druid, and it's gonna be so easy. The good thing with a warrior, you can play with like every healer though. Like you can play with a Shaman and you get Wind Fury, or you can play with a Priest and you won't get someone with like CC with the Fear. But like Druid overall is just so good and really strong. The only bad thing when you play a warrior in twos is you're probably not gonna play two deeps, so you have to play healer and warrior all the time, and you're gonna expect 30, 60 minutes games when you have to climb rating, because you're gonna face other warrior and Resto Druids all the time, or Disc Priest and rogues. So yeah, that's the bad thing, that you're actually forced to play with a healer. So long games, pretty much, if you want to go high rating.
I'm looking forward to those long games. I used to enjoy it where it was almost just a stalemate and it would last so long. Now it was just who got bored first. But yeah, you're right. Like warrior Paladin works well. Warrior Resto Druid. I think we're gonna hear this a lot. That pair anything that's competent in PvP, pair it with a Resto Druid, and you've got a chance of getting Gladiator, because they just are that good. Resto Druids are that good in TBC for PvP. All right, cool. So just briefly then, when it comes to warriors, the only thing I really want to discuss is your thoughts or worries or opinions on the massive amounts of warriors that we've got in Classic, compared to quite clearly what we've just all more or less agreed on is that there's not a big requirement for them outside of them tanking. An arms warrior is nice to bring the buff. Fury warriors, their damage is mediocre, but ultimately TBC is a ranged expansion. So I mean, like Meta, what do you think about the fact that we're inundated with warriors because of how strong they are in Classic? What's going to be the problems in TBC?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are shit scared about it, because I get a lot of people asking me in my chat, like, do I need to re-roll? But I honestly don't think everyone needs to like go for the massive effort of re-rolling. I mean, it isn't like we're not going for Mythic World First on a Jara or whatever the new raid is. So like, I don't really think you need to like optimize absolutely everything and just bring only one warrior. I think some raid comps will deal with a couple warriors. It's not going to be absolutely detrimental to the entire raid group if there's a couple warriors. I think people are just getting a bit too scaredy pants about it, to be honest.
It's because they're watching dickheads like me saying, quick, re-roll, delete your character, rogues and warriors are useless.
Yeah.
What about you, Cutie? What do you think?
I would most likely say you have to re-roll, or at least get a second character ready, in case there's not going to be spots. And at the same time, if there's not going to be fresh servers, then you have to stack up on gold right now, because no dual spec in TBC, and you will have to respec Grot so many times back and forward. What else? Yeah, then you need your blacksmithing, and that's going to be expensive too.
Yeah, it is going to come down to professions as a warrior. That is going to be a big thing, definitely. The only one thing,
I said in the beginning, is that there's not going to be many Fury or Arms warriors, one or two in a raid group, most likely. So get used to tanking. That's all I can pretty much say.
Tank slave for most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any DPS warriors watching at the moment, yeah, you might want to think about a transition into tanking or a transition into a more useful class like a warlock. But we need to move on to the next class, but really quickly, do you know what? The one thing I didn't realise was I'm not going to say it's useless, but Victory Rush. Now, I thought Victory Rush always healed. But it weren't actually till Wrath, was it? So when I did start playing on a warrior recently, and I'm using Victory Rush thinking, oh, watch this big 20%, 30% of my health go up, and got nothing, and was like, that was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it's just like a free little cheeky damage ability after you've killed someone.
Yeah, it's pretty crap, isn't it, in TBC? It's so good in Wrath, though. But this ain't a Wrath stream. It will be one day. All right, cool. So warrior, basically, you can tell we're fairly unanimous that it's going to be great. It's going to be great if you're tanking. DPS in, you might be slightly concerned about raid spots, but most guilds are going to want one or two.
Yeah, definitely early TBC, but I think like obviously later on, warriors get a little bit better, so it's not so much of an issue.
Yeah, totally agree. So moving on to the Shaman. I mean, we know they're going to be stacked. I'll put on for now just the. I've only gone one ability on here, which is Water Shield, and there is a reason for that, which I'll explain in a little bit. But obviously, talent changes to Shamans and the viability of Elemental and Enhancement. Now, again, I don't want to steer the conversation too much, so we'll go with Fake QT first. What's your thoughts of just Shamans in general in PvE? We'll go to PvP afterwards, but in PvE, what do we think of Shamans?
They're so great. Like, classic, you're forced to heal. When you can't play Elemental, of course, but yeah, it's not that great compared to playing Resto. But in TBC, it's completely different. Now you can play like all three specs because Elemental get at the bottom of the tree. You can see there's a spell you can enable, and this give 3% hit and 3% crit. I guess I believe it's that to your party group. So that's gonna be like really huge, and you want to have a Shaman. At the same time, enhancement, you will gain a lot of mana back as well from your last talent sire. So like this is gonna be viable, and you can actually do pretty good damage as an enhancement, especially early on as well. So like all three specs will be good in TBC compared to classic. So I could see like a lot of warriors maybe rolling enhancement Shaman instead.
Yeah, it's a fair point. What do you think about a meta?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously probably the strongest support class in the game. Who are very close with like Paladin as well, because obviously they bring so much totems. Like all the totems are useful, and obviously they're only party wide. So the more Shamans you bring, the more totems you can spread between the entire group. And apart from that, they've obviously got that ability in the deep into enhancement that slightly buffs. I think it increases the attack power of everyone else, every other melee in the group as well. So that's like basically makes enhancement Shaman pretty mandatory to bring into your melee group as well. It's just like everything for everyone. Like they can just support every aspect of the game. Really, support the healing, support the melee DPS, support the caster DPS, probably even support the hunters as well. And obviously heroism and bloodlust, that supports everyone. That's the main reason why they're stacked, because you can cycle Shamans in and out of groups, because there's no I can't remember what the debuff name was, but it was obviously the debuff in Wrath of Lich King added, so you can use heroism every 10 minutes. So then like obviously you can just say, for instance, you've got like a huge group of warlocks or hunters, you can just cycle Shamans in and out of the big DPS group and just keep cycling them in. Right, you get heroism or bloodlust for 30 seconds, and then you can get it for another 30 seconds straight away, so you can just get it for like a whole minute, and then you stack it with drums, and yeah, they just provide so much insane damage to all of your big DPS groups.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, when you look at them compared to, like, let's say Resto Shamans, as long as you don't need, let's say, massive tank healing like from a Paladin, or you can live without HOTS from a Resto Druid, for example. if you've got 5 resto shamans, and I would go as far as saying 5. People again in the comments will shoot me down for saying stacking one type of healer. But if you had 5 resto shamans, as long as they can keep the group alive, which ultimately the healer's job is that. Keep everybody alive. If they can keep everybody alive, but you now bring 5 bloodlusts / heroes and 5 different sets of totems for 5 different groups, why wouldn't you? I think resto shamans are going to get stacked quite big. Elemental are so they DPS cap so early, and what I mean by that is the fact that they can just pump in full greens. The damage that they do is absolutely broken. It's ridiculous early on. So if you're looking for some quick, easy Karazhan runs, for example, in new dinged gear, an elemental shaman in the group, I 100% will top the damage meter. It will beat hunters in equal gear. Obviously, if your hunter's got 4-piece beast lord, probably not, but we're assuming you've basically leveled to 70 and you're like, right, bang through the attunement and start doing Karazhan straight away. Your elemental shamans will be carrying the DPS because they don't need gear. But the downside to that is when they do get gear, their damage only goes so high. It caps out quite quickly, which that's why then everything else starts taking over. But early shamans will be amazing as elemental, and as enhancement, again, I'll probably get shot down, and on the basis I play feral DPS the majority of the time, they are probably the strongest melee, output-wise, damage-wise, and what they bring to the group. They probably are the number one melee to play. So what you were saying, Cutie, about warriors might want to roll enhancement shamans, I 100% agree, and I think rogues as well. Warriors, I know we haven't got to rogues yet, but warriors, rogues, we might see them more inclined to be running around as enhancement shamans. What about PvP? So what do you think, Cutie, as shamans in PvP? I mean, my just get my opinion out there really quickly straight away is the DPS specs are not as strong as everybody, more or less all other classes. I think just because of the lack of survivability and personal cooldowns. But Resto is just as good as any other healer if you're not a druid.
Yeah, when it comes to PvP, the only real spec to go for is sadly Resto. Like you said, enhancement, yeah, they don't have that much survivability. So, it's only in Rev they become really strong in 2s and 3s, but yeah, go Resto if you're planning to PvP on your Shaman, if you want to go high at least. If it's just for fun, yeah, play whatever you like. But if you plan to go high, you probably have to play Resto together with a Retro Paladin for the Wind Fury and then Seal of Blood. That way you can your Paladin can do a one shot. So yeah, elemental and enhancement is good for PvE, but not PvP.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had not a debate, but obviously, you get these people commenting on YouTube videos and stuff. And when we were talking about shamans, we need to remember, everybody needs to remember, we're talking about the rule, not the exception. Yes, there will always be that one enhancement shaman who's playing with another class that complements it well and can get gladiator. All of these elemental could make it to gladiator, but we are talking about the rule in general. There will always be that exceptional enhancement shaman that plays so well with his partner that they can make it to gladiator. But in general, they're stronger classes. A warrior in PvP versus an enhancement shaman, the warrior's better. A rogue, the rogue is better. Melee classes in general, enhancement in PvP is one of the weaker ones out of them. Do you know much about shamans in PvP meta? I mean, as I say, I only have second-hand experience.
I mean, there's a reason why there's a meme amongst arena people called Train the Blue. Because obviously, I think Elemental Shaman, Restorus, and Shaman obviously rely much more. A lot of their healing and damage comes from just sitting there and hard casting. Whereas a Resto Druid can rely on hots and things like that, so they can continue to heal while running away around a pillar. Whereas a Shaman can only really heal, but just sat there, hard casting. So that's kind of what where the Train of Blue meme comes from. Recently, I had a comment on one of my videos. I didn't really pay much attention to it, but apparently, because of people been playing private servers for so long, there's a new, different way to play enhancement shaman that people have optimized, which makes them, I'm not saying it makes them a top tier class or anything, but it makes them much better than people previously realized. So a lot of people obviously presume that enhancement is not going to be that good. But I think, because a private server community been optimizing so much, apparently, well, this is what the comments said anyway, that enhancement just simply aren't as bad as people originally thought they were. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out when, Classic TBC comes out.
Is that like a certain niche PvP spec, or like is there?
Yeah, it must be something. I'll have to bury through my channel and try and find the comment again. Yeah.
Yeah. As I say, when it comes to PvP across all the classes, there's probably 2 or 3 that I'm quite savvy with, but Shaman is not one of them.
Maybe in 5s you can play elemental in 5 versus 5, and because in arenas you actually have your heroism or bloodlust, so that could be really good when you play 5 versus 5. That you have an elemental shaman popping that, and then you play with like a really good caster comp or something like that. Then you could probably go high for sure because you have 5 versus 5. But in 2s and 3s, I don't think overall that the player base will go high in rating.
Yeah, and like Meta said, train the blue. As soon as you see a shaman, you just, no matter what their spec is, just lock them down, get them out of the fight, and then there's one man down fairly quickly because there's just not a lot that they can do to survive. So, all right, cool. So, but shamans overall, I think we agree. PVE wise, all 3 specs in a really good place. A lot of people might be re-rolling shamans. PvP, if you're resto, you're probably laughing, but outside of that, if you're playing for fun, like Cutie said, if you're playing elemental enhancement in PvP for fun, you'll probably have a good time. But if you're playing competitively, you probably want to be resto. Moving on to the next class, which is the priest. Good, one of my favourites. If I actually stay on the right screen, there we go. So priests.
Can I take a quick pee break?
Yeah, of course you can. Go on. We'll get cracking. So I'll open on priest anyway, mainly because it's my main on Endless. So I've played all 3 specs in PvE and PvP, predominantly holy. Well, actually predominantly IDS holy, because circular healing is as fun and as nice as it is on certain fights. Largely IDS. You want one IDS priest in the group anyway, and that used to be me. So healing wise in PvE, amazing. But like I keep saying, as amazing as they are, and they've got a massive toolkit, a high skill cap. But a priest is 100%. A holy priest is probably the most engaging and difficult healer to master out of all of them, just because you need to know when to use Binding Heal, which is a new spell you get, by the way. When to use Circular Healing if you are COH spec'd. When to use... Well, no, I'm not even going to mention Lowell. But, you get procs where you get free heals. There's a lot going on, and you can be extremely powerful as a healer. But if no one dies and you've just got a resto shaman, as long as nobody dies and you don't need that massive toolkit, you might as well bring bloodlust or heroism. And as I say, for any healer, holy paladins, resto druids, priests, all other healers that are not shamans, that should be the worry, is the fact that you may be able to bring and keep people alive and bring something. The reason the priest probably has to worry a little bit less is having an IDS priest in the group is useful because it gives everybody spell power. So there is a reason to bring one, whereas opposed to sort of a holy paladin, if you've got a prot tank and maybe you've even got a rep paladin, as long as you're getting the important blessings that you need, you might not take holy paladins. It's very it's a personal opinion as a raid leader on what you actually find more useful. And Shadow, obviously, everybody's going to want Shadow Priests. It's as simple as that. Like they're so good, and that was why the only one ability that I actually put on screen is Vampiric Touch, because it causes 650 shadow damage. Don't worry about how much damage it does, but causes all party members to gain mana equal to 5% of any shadow spell damage you do. So, the more damage you do and the better gear you've got and the more skilled you are, the more mana you're going to give to the party, and it's versatile. So you could be in the healing group if it's low levels of gear early on in the expansion. Your healers are struggling for mana, or you be in when you go into tier 5 where mages start getting their 2-piece, which increases arcane's damage by ridiculous amounts. Then obviously you might put them in the DPS group instead if the healers are obviously not having mana issues. So I think PvE-wise, they've got it absolutely wrapped up. Cutie.
PvE wise or what?
PvE, yeah, PvE.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Circle of Healing, as you mentioned, that is really strong, and I think early on, for 5 months, bringing a priest when you have to dungeon farm your way to 70, and also farm heroics, they're like really strong. And like for Shadow, yeah, you can actually play a Shadow Priest in TBC because of the mana. But yeah, I haven't played much Priest myself. I just know, like, when it comes to PvE, you have a lot of possibilities and you're not forced to heal like in Classic.
Definitely. What about you, Matt? What do you think about PvE priests? But all specs, all 3 specs.
Yeah, well, actually, main Shadow Priest on Warmane's Outland TBC server. So I have a little bit of experience, but not that much. I'd say, like, so I remember when I first got into a guild, they basically said, right, we need a Shadow Priest because we need a mana battery. So that's where priests get that, like, kind of nickname from. And I actually did, I looked at, like, how much mana everyone else in the group gained from, like, just short fights in Karazhan, and it was, like, basically equal to an entire Warlock's or a Mage's entire mana pool. So if you imagine, if you have a Shadow Priest in your group, you basically have twice as much mana. You have, like, double the mana pool. They provide that much mana back. Obviously, if you have a Vampiric Embrace, which provides a little bit of off healing, although sometimes it can generate a bit too much aggro, so you should only use it from time to time. Certain fights call for it when there's, like, a lot of AoE pressure on the group, and you can provide. You can, if you actually look at the healing meters, like how much it actually healing you will do with Vampiric Embrace, it is pretty significant as well. The only real downside of Shadow Priest is Mind Flay. So Mind Flay is a bit of a pain in the backside because it has less range than other abilities, and I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any talents in the Shadow Tree that increases the range of your spells. So you kind of suffer a little bit with Mind Flay because you have to be a little bit closer than all the other ranged casters. So, for instance, on the last boss of Karazhan, on Prince, you actually get is it Enfeeble debuff that the melee get, which is very frustrating. So you actually have to, like, be a melee DPS. You kind of have to dip. You have to move around and dip in and out of melee. Well, not melee range, but, like, obviously Mind Flare range. And that's a little bit frustrating. And I think there's other issues in other fights as well. But apart from that, there's obviously Shadow Weaving. If you haven't already talked about that, that massively boosts the damage of Warlocks. Last night I was doing Headless Horseman boss, and very weirdly I had 2 Shadow Priests in the group. And I noticed that I'm only decked out in, like, really crap gear at the moment because I've just gained to level 70, but I noticed my DPS was pretty much nearly doubled just having a Shadow Priest in the group. So they obviously provide a lot of extra DPS for Warlocks, and obviously there's going to be loads of Warlocks in TBC. Obviously, another thing you've also got Misery as well as Shadow Weaving that increases the spell damage of everyone. So it isn't just Warlocks that they, provided a little bit of boost for. You've also got all of the unique priest racials that interact with a Shadow spec differently. I think the main one, the best in slot class, race to go for is an Undead for Devouring Plague, because it's basically just an extra dot to stick on the target. But I remember playing Blood Elf Shadow Priest, and you can get this ability called Consume Magic, and if you decked yourself out in, like, loads of buffs that you didn't really need on your character, you can use Consume Magic and it will consume one of your buffs to actually get, like, a fairly decent mana boost, and then you stack that with obviously all the Blood Elf mana regenerating buffs, so you could get some pretty decent mana regeneration. And you've also got Shadow Fiend as well, which provides you a lot of mana back. Yeah, that's pretty much it, all I know. You've also got 5-second silence, which is, like, insane sometimes in PvP.
Oh, yeah, no, that is strong in PvP. And it was quite what you were saying about Consume Magic. Yeah, it's quite common to just consume a rank 1 Inner Fire. No, not Inner Fire. What's it called? You know, the one that gives you armour.
The armour one, but I can't remember what other buff. I used to stack myself on all these kind of crap buffs. Because, like, priests seem to have, like, loads of buffs. I used to just put loads of buffs on. You can also use a power word shield when you're in shadow form, which is really useful in raiding to just mitigate some damage.
Yeah, definitely. And what you were saying about range, so yeah, that was probably the most irritating thing about playing a Shadow Priest was Mind Flay. So there is a talent. I think it's a Affinity Reach or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the name of the talent is. It's the one that's under Mind Flay, so it increases the range of shadow spells by 20%. But Mind Flay is only 20 yards anyway. So yeah, it gives you, like Angus saying in chat at the moment, it gives you 24 yards, but 24 yards is crap. Like you said on Prince with Enfeeble, you're in the range for his Shadow Nova, so you need to be dancing in and out constantly, which it's just annoying. Oh, it's Shadow Reach is the name of the talent. Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, Priest in PvE, they're obviously Discipline, not so much, but obviously Holy, and it may be going down as far as Improved Divine Spirit is really good. Shadow, amazing, and yes, they absolutely are a mana battery. And trust me, as someone who's been playing on Karazhan as a Boomkin, I know the difference between having a Shadow Priest in the group and not having a Shadow Priest in the group. It normally means about 200 goals worth of consumables. That's the difference in mana pots.
I think Disc Priest will have a little bit of a place in raiding, because isn't Pain Suppression at the bottom of a tree?
Yeah, Pain Suppression is it's really nice.
Very useful for like progressing through Karazhan, because obviously the warrior tanks won't have 100% avoidance with shield block up, so Pain Suppression was basically nearly as good as a shield wall. So we used to use that quite a little bit, just to kind of like help out with the mechanics a little bit.
Yeah, it probably will have its place. And the thing is as well, obviously we are talking private servers where all the content is a lot more difficult, and yeah, ultimately we don't know what's going to come, and new metas are being found out all the time. You know, the amount of people that are playing on private servers versus when we actually get a classic TBC launch, you know, the numbers are going to be so much higher, so things can shift. But you know, Shadow Priest 100% in PvE, they're going to be wanted. What about PvP now? From just, again, I'll go briefly first just on the PvP side of things. They are actually really strong. You know, as Shadow Priest Warlock together has always been a good comp, just the sheer amount of dots and, you know, off-healing support that the Shadow Priest can do. And their damage is actually disgusting in PvP from what I've seen and what I remember. I mean, what's your views on them in PvP? You've already mentioned meta about the silence, which the silence is insane, and their fear's pathetically overpowered as well, even though it's on a cooldown.
I used to play them a lot in PvP during Warlords of Draenor, and I remember it just in a freeze team, it just kind of feels like you have two healers, because you can provide off healing, you can provide infinite amount of dispels, and pretty much everything that a healer has, a Shadow Priest has near enough anyway. So I remember them just being a great support class. There's a reason why there's that comp called God Comp, which I'm pretty sure is Resto Druid, Mage, and Shadow Priest, or a mixture of any of them. And you know, it's called God Comp because it just has literally everything in it.
Yeah, I remember God Comp. I must admit, I wouldn't have remembered what the actual setup was, but yeah, I do remember the name. What about you, Fake QT? What's your experience or thoughts on priests in PvP? I mean, we haven't really touched on the healing side in PvP, which obviously priests are very strong. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So, like most priests usually go for Disc Holy, and then find a rogue for twos, just like retail right now, rogue and Disc Priest. But like as you said, then you can play a Shadow Priest for sure. And play with a rogue or mage is really strong, because you have a lot of CC that doesn't share the same DR, and this is really strong. And you have the 5-second silence. So pretty much, if you're playing against a healer and a DPS and twos, and you play rogue and Shadow Priest, you can kidney shot right into a full silence. So that's 11 seconds where the healer can't do anything in this window. So it's just really, really strong. You can also combine it with like a blind into a sep into a silence. So definitely really, really strong. And healing wise, they're just strong as well when it comes to twos and threes as RMP or as rogue or a mage. Like really, really strong.
Yeah, I think priests are in a good place, and I think we will see an influx of them as well. I mean, I know there's a lot of priests in Classic, but I think we will see more priests running around in TBC. So I think to all you priests out there, you're in a happy place, definitely in a happy place. And as I say, the fact that 2 of the 3 people on here have played Priest as a main, goes a long way, really. So we'll move on from Priest. On to the Paladin, which I'll let you kick off with Paladin, Matt. I know you played a Paladin main for quite a while, didn't you, on Endless?
Yeah. It's quite recently, actually. But mostly protection. A little bit of retribution, yeah.
Keep messing up my slides, but go on. Well, what do you think about Paladins in PvE?
I mean, I would argue they're the best tank. I think people would probably argue the toss with me about that.
You wouldn't be arguing with me. I'm going prop Paladin for TBC.
I think overall they're actually, because of Holy Shield, because Holy Shield has like more, if you talent improved Holy Shield, it has, I'm pretty sure it has more stacks than the warrior equivalent, which is shield block. So it's a little bit easier for a Holy Paladin to avoid crushing blows because they can get that avoidance a little bit easier. But obviously they don't have the cooldowns, which is where they suffer massively. And then like when they start getting more and more gear, they get more and more spell power. On demons and undead, they have higher threat per second because of exorcism. And then because of they have 2 talents that have stamina scaling, they end up having like more. I'm pretty sure they end up having more health than a warrior as well because of, I can't remember what the 2 talents are called, but there's like basically 2 talents that increases your stamina by 5%, or then the other one is like 10%. So they're basically, the more they've got like an extra 15% stamina, and obviously stacks and stacks and stacks, and you get more and more gear, more and more stamina gems and things like that.
Is it the original Ardent Defender talent? I could be wrong there.
I'll have a little look. It's the Divine Shield talent. And
you get 4%. Yeah, you get 4% from improved Divine Shield. That's right.
Sacred Duty, I think.
Yeah, that's right. What about the other specs? So yeah, we know obviously prop Paladins definitely have their place and then start shining. Very, very bright. Prop Paladins are a good prop Paladin. Well, they're going to make gearing up early on very easy because they are the gods of dungeons and heroics and the gods of trash when it comes to tanking in general. But what do you think about Holy and Rep?
Well, Retribution's mainly only brought, honestly, to refresh judgments on the tank. So you've got Judgment of Wisdom, which gives, it's basically a little bit similar to Vampiric Touch, gives the entire raid loads of mana. I'm pretty sure it's the entire raid as well, so it's like raid-wide mana regeneration rather than just on the party. And then you've also got Judgment of Light, raid-wide AoE healing, which is really, really nice. And you've also got the Judgment of the Crusader, which, when talented, pretty sure it increases the critical damage of over melee, which is obviously a little bit of a cheeky bonus too. So you could, as a Rep Paladin, so basically you've got an ability called Crusader Strike at the bottom of the Retry, and if you read the tooltip, it basically refreshes all the judgments. So you can have all the Holy Paladins in the group, use all the different judgments, and the prop Pally as well, and the Retribution Paladin will just basically just keep refreshing all of those judgments and just keep them rolling on the entire raid.
Yeah, and like you say, the 3% crit as well, it is lovely. You know, it's, and again, raid wide. It's like when you bring a Feral Druid, you get 5% crit, but for the party, this is 3% crit for, yeah, it doesn't matter what party you're in.
Yeah.
Which is very nice.
If you really want to like contribute to the raid, though, you probably will have to pull your socks up and craft Storm Herald. Max out your blacksmithing and get that big fat 2-handed 3.8 second weapon speed mace, because that will massively increase your damage, because a lot of your damage is based on the current, like the top end maximum damage number of your weapon. So Crusader Strike, pretty sure it's 100% of weapon damage. Seal of Command, weapon damage. Seal of Blood, weapon damage. And obviously one of the big issues of Rep Paladin is that Blood Elf are going to be about 20% stronger than any Alliance Paladin, so that's kind of like a little bit of an issue as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's what private servers get right, where they give Seal of Blood to both Alliance and Horde. Yeah, I think in a classic TBC launch where you got Vengeance for the Alliance and Blood for the Horde, it's gonna skew the Paladin population. Because me personally, I would, if I weren't so set on being Alliance, Seal of Blood is enough for me to want to go Horde. Which, because it, like you said, it is just that much better. And then Holy Paladins, obviously Holy Paladins, amazingly strong healers, completely different to how they play in Classic, where at the moment you just spam Flash of Light constantly. You'll be more fake casting Holy Light, getting those big illumination procs to get your mana back. But the healing of a Holy Paladin is immensely strong. Again, for me, downside slightly is if a Shaman can keep the group up equally as well as you, then you'll probably bring Hero or Lust instead. But what do you think, QT? Because I'm just going to dart away from the mic for 2 secs. So go on, what's your thoughts on Paladin?
I'm gonna try to make it short then. So yeah, for Holy, in 5-mans, I would usually not bring a Paladin for healing. Like, I would rather bring a Shaman with Bloodlust or Heroism. But for raiding as a Holy Paladin, you're gonna be main healing the tank. So they're really, really strong, and they will pretty much not go. For tanking, yeah, you covered already. Like, when I speed level in 5-mans, for example, and I have to farm my reputation, I always bring a Prot Paladin. The downside, though, is the mana. And you have to remember, if you're gonna play as a Prot Paladin, then you will actually need to bring a lot of consumables, mana potions, because the moment you go you're gonna die, pretty much. You have to make sure you don't go at any point. So like for 5-mans, it could be really awesome to bring a Resto Druid and then play as a Prot Paladin for the inner weight from the Druid. And as you said, yeah, Retro Paladin, I've played with a few of some really good Classic players from raiding content who rolled on some private servers with me in TBC. And as Retro Paladin, they have been in like top 5 sometimes because they can do so huge damage, especially early on.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, you have to know everything about the class before you can shoot out a lot of damage. You can't. It's like the same with Arena. Every spec can, of course, work, but you have to know a lot about the class before you can do really good, especially as a meme spec usually.
Yep, totally agree. So, yeah, ultimately, PvE wise, they're good. You know, they're all specs. Rep maybe less. Probably less optimal than the other 2 specs, but Holy Paladins, Prot Paladins, you're going to see everywhere. So what about PvP? I'm going to let you 2 guys go first so I can actually step away from the mic just for 30 seconds. So if you want to kick off on Paladin in PvP, then Meta can take over.
Okay, Prot Paladin, on private servers we never see these. So yeah, don't expect that to happen. Healing wise, with a warrior, you can probably do pretty good. But I would say Retro Paladin is actually really, really nice in arenas. And the reason for this is because of Wind Fury Totem. And since Alliance also gets Shaman, it doesn't really matter. But of course, yeah, you have Seal of Blood as a Blood Elf, which can do some really nasty damage. So, like, if you play a Retro Paladin Classic right now, you should look forward to TBC, because maybe it's a meme spec right now, but in arenas it will definitely work. And healers is really strong as well.
Yeah, I mean, Wind Fury Totem benefits Rep Paladin the most out of any other classes, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it will increase a proc chance of... Well, it's not just a proc chance, it's... Because when you're a Blood Elf Paladin, you have Seal of Blood, which is a guaranteed extra damage on every melee swing, so when you get a Wind Fury, you proc the extra attack, and then it also gives you the extra damage of Seal of Blood. That's why it's
exactly. Yeah, and then you have your Crusader Strike, and at the same time you also have your Repentance, so you can set up a huge CC when you play with a healer. So, like, I think Retro Paladins is gonna be really strong, and especially when you're gonna see some of the high-rated players all of a sudden play Retro Paladin, you're probably gonna be amazed how good they actually are.
I remember Rep Paladin, Arms Warrior actually being really strong together. I know you lack like we said right at the start with Warriors, you know, they're probably more optimal with a healer, but I do remember Rep Arms being really strong back in the day.
I mean, if you bring a Shaman and play 3s, it's gonna be really strong, because then the Warrior and the Paladin is gonna have Wind Fury Totem. So yeah, that combo in 3s is definitely gonna be really, really good.
Yeah, you can pretty much global people.
Like, so again, it's like with the priest, it's like bring another healer, because they can do dispels, it can do off heals, it can place bop, blessing of freedom on a warrior. I'm pretty sure that comp is called, when you mix a Ret Paladin with either a Death Knight or a warrior, it's called Vanguard's Cleave. Because mainly because of Blessing of Freedom, you can just give your Death Knight or your warrior Blessing of Freedom and just let him destroy everything because he just cannot be pinned down by any CC.
Yeah, definitely. So wrapping up on Paladin, I think and obviously Holy in PvP is stick a Holy Paladin with a Rogue or a Arms Warrior or pretty much anything that can really do good burst. They're in a good place as well.
Two things I think we left out with Prop Paladin though, because obviously like one of the biggest issues in vanilla is that they don't have a taunt, which is pretty stupid. Like, why would you give a class a tank spec but not give it a taunt? And then obviously they have huge mana issues, they would just run out of mana. But obviously in TBC they are given a taunt, which is actually more of an AoE taunt on a very short cooldown. And there's a macro that you can use, which just allows it to just function like a normal taunt, because you have to manually apply it to like a friendly party member, but you can just make a macro so it just automatically works like a normal taunt. And then obviously spiritual achievement is naturally is given to all paladins. So it's also a Ret Paladin as well. And whenever you gain healing, you obviously gain a little bit of mana back. And then if you ever have mana issues, well, to be honest, like if you're a good protection paladin, you never really should have mana issues, and you should never really need a mana potion, because what you can do is just down rank consecration, you can down rank holy shield, and then just wait for your mana to get topped up. Like, I've never used mana potion as a prop paladin. I've used a lot as a Ret Paladin, but never as a prop paladin. Because if you're, especially about a main tank, you just gain so much mana anyway, even in a 5-man. I mean, if you start to deplete your mana, you just start down ranking stuff.
It's interesting, that. Yeah, down ranking as a prop paladin. I bet that's something that people don't do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. So, what would your so Meta, on the basis, you've probably played a paladin in TBC more than me and Fake QT. I want to go out and say that. Like, what do you think paladins are in a good place? Should they be happy that they're going to be going from classic to TBC as a paladin?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're the best tank in TBC. But that's my humble opinion.
Well, I hope you're bloody right, because as I say, it's going to be my main.
Well, for main tanking, I doubt you're really gonna main tank in the beginning. Like, we're talking about warriors. Yeah. I mean, you can probably, but I think most people would actually prefer to have a warrior.
I think the only time you'd take a prop paladin over a warrior for main tanking, for instance, on Gruul, is if the prop paladin has got avoidance cap, whereas the prot warrior may not. That's the only time that you'd... Because I've seen prop paladins main tank Gruul quite a bit, actually, because I think the reason why is because it simply just had better gear than the warriors, and they could just get that avoidance cap because of Holy Shield.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Crushing blood. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. By the way, regarding the mana potion situation, it was because if you use Lay on Hands, you lose all your mana. So that's why, like, if you use Lay on Hands, it's always nice to like have your mana potion, so you can get mana back and maintain your threat overall. But yeah, else you're not gonna need your mana potion to gain mana.
Yep, cool. So we think paladins are in a good place anyway, definitely. And I think the Horde, ultimately, depending on how they launch it, I'm fairly sure that when the Dark Portal opens, that's when you're going to be able to create your Horde paladins and your Alliance Shamans. If they bring them out sooner, I think we'll see a lot more. Personally, I think we'll see a lot more Shamans on the Alliance and Paladins on the Horde if they're allowed to start them a couple of weeks prior to being able to step into Outlands. If not, there's going to be enough of them still. But yeah, my gut feeling is that you won't be out. The only reason I'm saying this is because it's a question that gets asked a lot. Do you think we're going to be able to start Paladins early? Do you think we're going to be able to start Shamans early? I'd say no, because that's not the authentic TBC feel. But if you can, I think it will actually increase the population of both of them. Because I think most people, they may want to be an Alliance Shaman, but if they're already a Alliance Mage, are they going to want to get left behind by 2-3 weeks to go Shaman? I think it will sway a lot of people's decisions on how they're actually launched. But ultimately, Paladin's in a really good place. So next up, we have Druid. We have Druid. So I suppose I should probably open on Druids. Fucking amazing. Like, we might as well just... That's it. Well, we'll move on to the next class. There's just no point. There's no point talking... Fucking godlike in PvE and PvP. And less PvE than PvP. We've already said, like, let's start with PvE. I'm getting carried away. So PvE, Boomkin, viable. Absolutely 100%. Having it with your Warlocks, giving them 5% crit, and a good Boomkin who knows how to micromanage trinket procs will do big damage. Feral DPS. On Endless, our Magferrodon kills, Gruul kills, Nightbane, all the more difficult bosses of tier 4. Deptosaurus, shout out to Deptosaurus if you're watching this, mate. Quentin 3D, I think your name is on Twitch. He was generally top as feral DPS, as in out damaging the hunters, out damaging everybody. Nothing about skill there, you know, other than him being extremely skillful, but there was nothing wrong with the hunters and warlocks and everything. Feral played right is very, very good. Same in classic. You don't see many good feral druids, but the ones that you do see are amazing. So feral DPS, absolutely viable. Feral tank, don't want to play one, but amazing. You know, like the best off tank that you can get, because you've got a DPS spec and a tank spec in the same talent tree. So all you've got to do is change your gear. So on the fly, in somewhere like Karazhan early on, where there's probably 40% of the instance is solo tankable, you've now got a DPS for all those fights where you only need one tank. Resto will top the meters. It's as simple as that, because their hots are just that powerful, keeping them rolling on the main tank, the off tank, and then just spot healing the group with more hots. You know, the addition of Life Bloom, which is on screen now. You know, Life Bloom is so good. They've got so much control as well, you know, with Cyclone, which we use regularly on fights like Aran for ads. Flight form. Getting flight form is just amazing. The Druid is the perfect farming ult as well. So it can be a really, really strong main. If I could be bothered, I would have two Druids. I'd have a Druid main and a Druid ult, and my Druid ult would be my farming character just because Flight Form's free. Save yourself 1,000 gold that you haven't got to invest in. I'll leave it there as PvE. They're amazing. What do you think of Druids, Meta Goblin? Please say they're good.
Yeah, when you're talking about Cyclone, it reminded me of an old Preach video where I think it's like the like evolution of the warrior through all the expansions, and he's there like getting cycloned, and he's there like in a mental institution because he's been cycloned that much and he's going crazy. So it's just one of those irritating crowd control abilities that can't be dispelled.
It's so good, and it's so good in anywhere that somebody can get mind controlled. You know, I know the majority of that is in sort of 5-mans or 10-mans, but you know, Karazhan, there's a lot of mind controls in Shadow Labs. Rings a bell. There's some mind controls in Shadow Labs. Being able to just put that 6-second CC on, so they're actually you're taking them out the fight, so you're not taking damage, but you're also protecting that person who's mind controlled, because they're not going to take any damage and they're not going to deal any damage. Whereas if they were sheeped, then dots or accidental cleave, you know, it's going to break it. You know, Cyclone's a very good, unique CC. And as I say, I think it lends itself perfectly to things like mind control. What do you think, Fake QT? Give me the lowdown on Druids. Tell me how amazing they are. S tier class.
Whenever I play a Druid, I mainly play it in Wrath. But like Feral is my spec to go for when I play a Druid. And in in TBC you get Mangle, and this is so huge. Once you get this and you jump into Outland, like your leveling is gonna be so much easier. And like as you mentioned earlier, they can actually be really high on DPS meter in raids. When it comes to Resto, yeah, you have covered it pretty much. It's gonna be hot ceiling, but really strong. And Boomkin is going to be viable as well. So like all three specs will actually work. You can tank, you can DPS, and you can heal. Like, what's more to ask for?
The thing is, as well, just to add, obviously, you know I'm going to be more vocal about Druid than probably any other class. Having a really reliable Boomkin, so a Boomkin who you know has got no life, who's going to be there at every single raid without foul. No, everybody forgets. So everybody says, when you watch these YouTube videos, they brush over the fact that a Druid brings, a Boomkin brings 3% hit for the melee and range. So that's hunters and melee, funny enough. What they don't mention is because they fixate on the point that, well, everybody should be hit capped. Everybody should be hit capped already, before they step into a raid. Well, yeah, they can be, but why bother? If you've got a boomkin that raids all the time, drop that 3% hit and get some more useful stats. Get another 3% crit. Focus more on some more agility or more strength or like whatever. However you want to do it, you might change your gems up. There's
It's also pretty difficult for a Warlock to actually get hit capped.
Yeah, this is only ranged as in hunters though. It doesn't give
right.
the only hit a Warlock's going to get is from Draenei Presence and Shaman's Totems. This is only melee and hunters, but on the basis that you stack hunters, you're going to have 4 hunters that can drop, and especially a survival hunter. A survival hunter where crit is king. The more they crit, the more they proc expose weakness. Now you get their agility and attack power, blah 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 blah, all that. It's massive, but people seem to not rave about it as much as they should, because if you've got 5. Let's say you've got 5 hunters, 2 melee in a group, and that I think that's going to be fairly consistent. Or let's say 4 hunters and 2 melee. All of those can now have 3% crit extra each on their gear, or more primary stats, just because that boomkin's always going to be there. And he's always going to do good damage, and he's buffing, might not be a he, might be a she, I'm not being sexist. I'm sure women can play boomkins as well. Doubt it, but they will buff the Warlocks and the Hunters, and like I say, that's what you're doing. Stick a Boomy in the group with the Warlocks, give them 5% crit, and without even putting them in the group with the Hunters, they can now get 3% extra crit if they want to drop the 3% hit. Amazing. It's a dream. What about PvP? PvP, Druids, fake QT. I'll let you start.
For Resto, most likely the best healer. Because you can play, with a warrior, you're gonna go really high, but you can also play with a rogue. The downside, though, about playing as a druid healer is that, you have all your CC, but you can't dispel. Like a priest or paladin, you can't remove the roots, for example, or the sheep from your warrior. So you can almost have done, won the arena, and then your warrior gets CC'd, and you can't do anything to assist. You're just gonna stand there. But on the other hand, you have a lot of CC. You can't get sheep because you can always just go into cat form. And I don't know, all the top players usually play druid to go high with a warrior. But long games, when you play a warrior, you're supposed to go with a druid healer pretty much, or a shaman. So yeah, expect long games again, just like if you're playing a warrior.
Yeah. What about you, Metal? What do you think about druids? I mean, when I say druids, it's going to be resto druids that we focus on. Feral DPS are actually very good in arenas, but again, that's the exception, not the rule. The rule is resto druids. So,
I mean, only thing I can say from playing when I used to play PvP a lot on my Death Knight, the most irritating thing in the world was just trying to train a druid. It's just impossible, because they can just get out of every single slow by just jumping in and out of cat form, travel form, bear form, monkey form, whatever it is. They can just keep shape-shifting, and they're just unchaseable. It's so difficult. You'd have to stun them in out of form to get anywhere near them. The only thing I can comment when it comes to Boomkin, I know that Boomkin have really one of the good things about playing a Boomkin is it can fake cast really easily, because they have 2 different spell types. Because obviously Wrath is pretty sure Wrath is different to
Wrath's nature, Starfire's arcane. So 2 different schools.
So they can just pretend to cast Wrath, and people will interrupt it, or pretend to cast Starfire, and then even if that gets interrupted, they can just continue to cast Wrath or Starfire.
That's a good point. And obviously they've got ridiculous amounts of armor. They're not easy to take down. It is just when I say they're not easy to take down, they're not easy to take down for someone who's physical. So warrior, paladin, rogue, whatever. They've got a lot of armor, but they're a bit of a glass cannon. Even though I'm saying that, so I'm contradicting myself by saying that. But they've just not got that much survivability. As in you've got bark skin. That's it. And obviously you've not got the nice big instance.
Tanks.
Yeah. We should do a full episode where we talk about Boomkin tanks and Shaman tanks and prove people wrong that it can actually be done. but Resto Druids, easiest way to Gladiator, 100%, and not just easy for you, easy for your partner as well. They are going to be the go-to healer in PvP for twos, definitely twos. I'm not saying threes, but easiest way to Gladiator will be if you are a Resto Druid or you've got a Resto Druid with you. And again, what these guys have already spoke about, but just briefly talking about it anyway. Cyclone as a CC, Bash as a stun in bear form, Feral Charge as a silence and immobilize. It's ridiculous. You've even got what's it called, Maim as well. So if you wanted to start building combo points on someone, ready to go in cat form and maim them, there's just so much control as a druid. Obviously, yeah, it's crazy. So top tier PvP and I'd say higher tier PvE because all specs are viable. But again, it is the rule will be Resto Druids, probably in PvE and PvP. The exception will be those amazing balanced druids that know how to play. People like Bezowitz, if anyone watches Bezowitz, he's a very good boomy. So is that Scottejaye guy. He plays boomy really well. And there's ferals, obviously. There's feral DPS out there, which are absolutely amazing as well. So all-round strong class, but we need to move on. But if you're a druid...
Yeah, like feral druid, you can play with a rogue. That's going to be really good. And most
loads of burst.
Actually don't play only as Resto. They don't go with Tree of Life. They actually go into Boomkin as well. So like a mix 50-50. So yeah.
Get some offensive. Exactly. But yeah, really strong. If you're playing a druid, you're going to be happy. Trust me. So going on to the Hunter. Well, go on, Cutie. You start Hunter for PvE.
One button class. If you play a mage in phase 1-2 and you play it as a frost mage, you just have to tap your frostbolt. Well, if you want the same thing, the same experience in TBC, you're just gonna play a hunter because you're only gonna cast your steady shot. There's gonna be a macro, and that's the only macro you press, and you'll do max deeps, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I have to say. I don't like hunters, but like they're really good.
I don't like them either. Meta, what did you want to add anything about Hunter?
Well, I know of a lot of people. Like if you look at like really detailed hunter guides, not absolutely everyone uses that macro. So you don't actually have to use it if you don't want to. You can like separate those abilities into different abilities and probably throw a few more abilities into rotation if you want to. You aren't restricted to that one button macro. And obviously, one of the main appeals of a hunter is the dungeon tier set bonus. That for some reason is just ridiculously overpowered because it reduces the armor of the boss, which for some reason, like when you reduce the resistance, like spell resistances or armor of anything in World of Warcraft, it seems to just like multiply the damage by a ridiculous amount. So that's why hunters just do stupid DPS at the beginning of TBC. The only downside to that obviously is that you need that set bonus, and obviously there's going to be loads more hunters playing the game and loads more hunters rolling on that gear and doing those same dungeons over and over. So that might be a bit of a grind, getting those gear pieces, but that's the only real downside, to be honest, because once you've got those set bonuses, it's pretty much plain sailing. Like you like the top tier DPS for the whole expansion, really.
Definitely. And the fact that you can pretty much go, let's take attunements out of the way, because obviously attunements are the only thing that will prove what I'm about to say wrong. You could literally go from 5-mans to tier 5 straight away, because you can get your level working crafted gear and then get your 4-piece Beast Lord, get Valanos, the bow Valanos, which is a BOE on the auction house, level 70 bow. Yeah, obviously there are epic bows from Karazhan, which are going to be better, but ultimately the bow's not actually making that much of a difference. It's your 4-piece Beast Lord and crafted gear. So you could just jump straight into tier 5. They are so ridiculously strong. Early on, and like you said, Matt, all the way, literally all the way through the expansion.
Yeah, I think hunters always try to get a range weapon with a specific weapon speed. I can't remember what it is. It's either like 2.7 or 3 seconds, which is why, could correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I've heard some people say this, but weirdly the legendary bow is worse than like top tier loot from Sunwell, just simply because of the interactions of steady shot. Like I think it clips auto shots because of steady shot spamming.
Yeah,
Something like
it ruins the macro. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Yeah, and it is basically, ideally, you want 2.7 plus. Anything over 2.7 is fine. I think 2.8 is ideal. Again, I'm not a master hunter by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, looking at research, I think anything over 2.7 onwards, you're safe. And it's only because of that macro. That's it. The way it interacts with the macro is not ideal. It's not. I'll be honest with you. Hunters are absolutely in PvE. They're an S tier. Absolutely amazing. The damage they do, what they bring, even with good crowd control from traps and stuff like that. Not a class for me, I'll be honest with you. Too boring, not enough challenge. But they are very powerful. So if you're playing a Hunter in Classic, you're going to be happy in TBC. In PvE, but PvP is probably a different story. Got to let you QT kick off. Hunters in PvP, what do you think?
Yeah, when you play PvP, you're not gonna play BM like you will in PvE most likely. But like that OP silence is so insane, and when you combine this with aim shot and the fact that you're gonna cast Viper Sting all the time and drain people's mana, then you can actually play as 100 and 2 healers in threes, and it's really strong. It's really, really strong. And hunters overall are just gonna be so great in PvP. Sorry.
I think they got lower representation than the other classes, but again, I think it's two ends of the spectrum. I think PvE, they're a no skill class, and I'm sorry to any hunters that think you need skill to press a macro, but they're a no skill class. But in PvP, I think there's a very high skill cap to hunters, personally.
Yeah, and survival will even be good as well in PvP because of the Vivian Sting. So like, there's so many opportunities for a hunter here compared to Classic. I would actually advertise, if you're planning to roll a hunter in TBC, that you level it right away and you start gearing up, because mainly in Classic raids you never see Druids and you often don't see hunters as well. So like, this way, if you gear up now, you can probably get into next, get those tier 3 gear, and you'll be ready to rock in TBC. So that's like my advice right now, because hunters are so strong.
I agree. I've got to just read out one comment from Twitch, from Pedro de Pacas 1. Disc Priest plus Hunter combo deep dicks anybody's mana pool. I just
mana burn as well, isn't it?
Yeah, mana burn on Vivian Sting. Yeah. Oh.
It's just anyway, I just thought a comment was funny. But yeah, again, so PvE, PvP, I assume meta, your probably thoughts are the same on PvP. That high skill cap, but yeah, low representation, probably due to it, but very strong.
Yeah, and obviously, one of the cool things about aim shot, it actually does reduce healing on a target as well, which is pretty lethal. It's like a mortal strike for warriors.
Yeah, a range mortal strike is pretty sick.
Yeah, and scatter shot right into a trap. So, but like, BM is viable as well, because Beastical Wrath also give you immunity to fear and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I think BM in PvP will be seen more, but because it is probably, again, when we're talking skill caps, I think popping Bestial Wrath and then just trying to burst someone down before you die is probably the route that the majority will go for. But I think playing sort of like you said with a silence in marksman, scatter shot, that will probably be the higher rating. If you're going 2k plus rated, you'll probably be marksman. If you're playing PvP for fun, you'll probably be BM, just trying to burst rogues down ridiculously quick, or burst, global mages and locks and stuff like. Well, not locks, because locks won't die, but definitely mages.
You can also protect yourself from rogues with flare.
Yeah. Good point. Obviously, flare. Yeah, flare is probably quite an underrated ability, to be fair, in PvP. Or underrated by most. And then Orc Racial as well, 5% pet damage for BM hunters. Again, in the comments, very good point. But I think, again, we all seem in agreement too much. We need to have a little argument, because it'd be boring otherwise. But yeah, I think hunters, PvP and PvE, in a really good place. Better place for PvE, as I say, purely because I think PvP is just a higher skill cap, because you're not just having to press one button. But ultimately, good place. Next classed up, the Mage. I mean, if it don't let you start, Cutie, you'll probably leave. So I reckon you need to tell us a bit about the Mage in TBC.
What you mean? I don't know anything about a mage.
I know, but can you just try and have a go anyway?
Okay, well, in TBC, for PvE wise, as a mage, you're gonna play all 3 specs. Early on, you're gonna play as a frost mage when you do dungeons, because you simply won't have good enough gear to play as a fire yet. And like, if you have a re-leveled in classic, this spec you can actually bring on to TBC dungeon leveling too, and even when you gear up, because you're most likely gonna play as 2 mages and a warlock and spell cleave in dungeons to gear up really fast. So like in the beginning you're gonna play frost, then you're gonna swap to fire the moment you're on like Tier 4 content, and later on, once you have some really good, like a high mana pool, you're gonna play arcane. So like you're gonna play as all 3 specs, and that's what I like about Mage in TBC when it comes to PvE, that you won't only play 2 specs or maybe 1 spec.
What is just out of interest, and I am genuinely curious. Like, what's your favourite spec in TBC though? You know, what do you think's the most entertaining spec to play? You know, forget the tier. You know, whether it's early on Tier 4, Tier 5, Tier 6. If you could play any of the specs, which is the one that you would rather play all the way through?
Well, it has to be Frost. Like, this spec is good for leveling, this spec is good for dungeons, it's good for raid. And in TBC, we get the pit. And that's simply, like, if you're good at controlling your pit, like, you need around 4 or 5 macros to control your pit really well. To put it on passive, to put it on aggressive, to make it castive spells. It's like, you need your pit nowhere as well. There's a lot of macros you have to make. But the moment you're really good at controlling your pet, you're gonna be really insane in PvP as well. And the fact that we get a pet is so huge.
Yeah,
and then in
spell
PvP,
still as well. I mean, spell still.
Yeah. Invisible, like, we get so many abilities. You get the table as well. So now you don't have to stand there and craft 1000 water anymore. You simply press one button, there'll be a table, and now you have food and water for the whole raid.
Yeah, mages changed quite drastically, didn't they, really? What's your thoughts on mages, Meta?
I only know a little bit because I altered one for a little bit. I remember when I made a video a little bit briefly about raid comps, and I kind of argued for the Frost being like the kind of early raiding spec, and I got like shit talked a lot of it about it. But I think, like, in my opinion, like Frost, like QT said, like, it's really great for dungeons because you got that improved Blizzard, which basically makes a tank totally redundant, because if you have like 3 mages, you can just keep using Blizzard and the tank just kind of sits there for moral support, while other mages just kind of AoE down the whole of Shattered Halls in a few pulls. And then so if you've got like a really strong spec for doing dungeons and a fairly decent spec that you can take into raiding, won't need to respec over time, you save a lot of money. One of the obviously the main reasons why Frost is like slightly better than Fire, like early raiding, is because you're not going to have that much crit, and obviously you have Icy Veins, which is like, and you can cold snap Icy Veins to get like basically 2 Icy Veins in one fight, which is really nice. But I honestly think Frost will probably get thrown under the bus a little bit, because obviously a lot of people are running into TBC with really good tier 3 gear, which will have crit, will have hit on it. So I think people will probably just end up playing Fire, unfortunately. And I think, Frost spec needs a little bit more love, because it is a pretty cool spec.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not even going to chime in on the PvE side, because, yeah, you guys between you with the Mage experience, you'll know more than me. I just do know how powerful with 2-piece tier 5, Arcane is. Needs the right comp. You ideally want a Shadow Priest. You might even want an Innovate from a Druid. But we are talking they're big pumpers. When you see what they can do on fights like Neverspite in the blue beam, it's ridiculous, like ridiculous damage. But what someone did mention again, Pedro, who is a long-time Mage player throughout all the expansions, is that for Gruul you need a Mage tank. I don't actually know if there's a way to kill High King Mulgar without a Mage tank. I've never tried. I just feel it's a necessity.
Nah, because you need your spell steal. you need his buff. You can't dispel his buff. You need the buff in order to tank him. So yeah, that's why you'll never see a tank, because it's spell damage as well. So like, yeah, as a warrior, maybe you have one spell reflect, but yeah, that's it. Then you're gonna die after.
Yeah, so people are saying you can cheese it with gear and an SL lock, but yeah, I think you're not going to do that, are you? You're going to take a mage, obviously. So, you know, you're going to want one mage in your roster just to be able to get to Gruul. But yeah, PvE, I completely agree with what you guys are saying. All 3 specs viable. Frost early on with poor gear will be really good. If you're going in full Nax gear where you've got quite a lot of crit, maybe fire is the way to go straight away. And then Arcane in tier 5 is amazing. But yeah, ultimately, you can play what you like as a mage. Whatever spec you prefer, you can probably get away with.
There is also a really cool, insanely high DPS AoE spec when you spec deep into fire. I'm pretty sure you just combine Dragon's Breath and you cycle different flame strikes. So you cycle probably rank 6, rank 7, or like basically the top 2 ranks. So you do 2 flame strikes, let them cycle because they basically the damage stack. So I did in private servers anyway. Dragon's Breath, and then finish them off with Arcane Blast, and it actually does more AoE damage than just doing Blizzard. So I always thought that was a really cool spec.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, there is loads of cool specs that you can play.
Yeah, what about PvP then? So got meta start if you want to start with. Actually, no, let Fake QT start because he is a mage main and has been for ever. I think he's a mage in real life. What do you think in PvP?
When it comes to PvP, yeah, like in season 1, you can play so many different comps because you could find another mage and both of you just go Arcane Fire, so Pump Pyro, and you can pretty much one-shot someone when you don't have any resilience. You have Elemental spec, yeah, which is good as well. You don't want to go like deep Arcane as well. That's not good. Even though you get the slow, that's really bad to like survivability. But like on the other hand, Frost is so insane because like you have his shatter comps, and what you don't have in Classic compared to TBC is Ice Lance. So this is pretty much as much damage as a Frostball deals, but this one is instant. So your pet has your freeze or his Frost Nova, and you can place this while you're so far away, and then you can channel your Frostball into Ice Lance and do like 50% of the target's health. So you can play as double Frost Mage, you can play as double Pump, you can play Healer and Frost Mage, you can play Healer and Pump. There's so many different specs. So in PvP they're so strong, and it's not like you're forced to play as a Healer and a Mage or a Rogue or a Mage. Like you can go with Shadow Priest, you can go with Feral Druid. So many possibilities.
So for pushing high, you know, we're talking you're going for Gladiator as a mage. What would you say is the best comp? Again, it's only going to be in your opinion, so people are probably going to go, no, I do it as mage warrior, whatever, you know. But what would you say is the absolute best twos comp as a mage?
That is difficult because it also depends if people try to dodge you. When I've played like arenas on private servers, if people don't dodge you, I mainly play as Frost with a Disc Priest. The downside though is if you meet like a hunter that's all of a sudden gonna drain you the whole game, you're gonna end up running pretty much. So like I prefer to actually play as Rogue and Mage because either you win the game fast or you lose the game fast. And if you make a mistake as double deeps, you will instantly lose. If you play with a healer, you can make way more mistakes, and that way I think you learn less compared to like making a mistake and then you find out, okay, we died here, we have to change something. And I like fast games. I hate long games because, yeah, as I said, you can make more mistakes and you improve better as a rogue and a mage.
Well, I was watching Azigod the other day, and obviously shout out to Azigod. Yeah, people. I'm sure a lot of people watch him in the TBC arena private server scene, and he kept coming up against. I felt sorry for him. Sorry, Azzy. This rogue mage comp that they just continuously kept coming up against game after game. I mean, they were fucking amazing. There's no other word for them. You know, I think the amount of control that a rogue mage brings together in a twos team is just ridiculous. And burst, obviously.
Yeah, and that's why I like to play it more than healer, because the moment you face a hunter, for example, and you just get drained, you know in the end it's most likely gonna be game over. But like you can always reset as a rogue and a mage, and I think you have the benefit against most comps when you play as a rogue and a mage compared to playing a disc and a mage. I would say, yeah.
Yeah. What thoughts, meta? Just wrapping up on PvP for mages.
Well, I'm pretty sure like if you play, the only thing I really know is like because from when I used to play Mists of Pandaria. But if you play with a Resto Druid, the entire arena team, like if you play with a Rogue, a Resto Druid, they could all open in stealth. You got invisibility, stealth, and Resto Druid's got stealth. So you go into the arena and there's no one there, which is really annoying. And I've also heard the Mage have a very, very high skill ceiling, probably like one of the highest skill ceilings like in TBC. So
yeah, I agree.
The downside though about invisible in TBC is that you can't see anyone, so you're pretty much forced to sit right next to your healer, so you can look at his monitor and know where the people you have to sheep is, because you can't see them when you're invisible.
yeah.
But overall, I think again, like mages, they're in a good place. I think PvE again, they're not as strong as warlocks in most your average circumstances. But PvP really, really strong. PvE, you're gonna want one in your group. Everyone needs water. But when it comes DPS perspective, in my opinion at least, you'd probably take a warlock over a mage. As much as you hate to hear that, fake QT, I'm sorry.
I know it already, yeah. Don't worry.
Cool. So we're done with a mage that I did put on screen, but you can't see it because fake QT's picture's blocking it. But I did put the 2-set, just in case anyone was wondering why I continuously mention the 2-set tier 5 for arcane mages. It increases the damage and mana cost of arcane blast by 20%. So if you imagine as any spec, your main ability, even though it's increasing the mana cost, obviously that's fine. There's ways around it with Innovate and Shadow Priests, but 20% damage on your biggest hitting ability. Pretty crazy. Next up, we have, error 404, class not found. What? Error 404, class not... it's a rogue. So rogue. Right. I'll let someone else open with rogues. Go on, Meta. Tell us about rogues in TBC.
Honestly, don't know a lot about rogues for TBC. I just remember that they get Shadow Step, which is one of the most fun abilities in the game, because one of the really frustrating things about playing a rogue is like, obviously your stealth is slower, makes you slower in pretty much all the way up until... I can't remember when they changed it, but eventually they changed it so that when you have it talented, actually 120% movement speed when you're stealth, so you can actually move around in stealth pretty quickly. If not, you have to rely on sprint or obviously bursting speed when they added that. It's just kind of frustrating to get like the perfect setup, because obviously classes have humans have stealth detection, all this kind of thing, and for some reason stealth just really doesn't feel as strong in classic, unless you have that talent that increases your stealth level. So, but like obviously Shadow Step, what you do is you just press that button, and then you're just behind them, and then you can just unleash your insane opener with like one button. It just makes things so much simpler.
Yeah, and getting a damage buff at the same time, 20% extra damage after a Shadow Step. Yeah, I mean,
and the movement speed as well. It's pretty stupid.
No, Shadow Step's amazing. I mean, they are godlike melee PvP spec, 100%. From a PvE perspective, again, I'll just put my 2 cents out there really quick. They're pretty shit, to be fair. There's not... If you've got a warrior main tank, there's not really much reason to bring one, because you won't use him. You'd bring a rogue for improved exposed armor. You can't use improved exposed armor when you've got a warrior with you, because it gimps their threat. Their damage is mediocre at best. You'll get rogues. You'll get again. I'm talking about the rule. You'll get the exceptional rogue who plays really, really well, and they'll keep up. They'll keep up. They're not going to be topping meters or anything like that. In PvE, they got a bad ride in TBC, I'll be honest with you. But they're the complete opposite in PvP. Absolutely amazing. Anyone who wants, and they're fun. Anyone who wants a fun class to play in TBC, bearing in mind I've got a rogue on Karazhan, my only other level 70 besides my druid, and I love playing a rogue. It's great fun in PvE and PvP. But I just sort of go into a dungeon or go into a raid knowing I can't physically top the damage meters. This is not possible. They do change slightly when you get Warglaives, obviously. And when I say slightly, they change massively. Now all of a sudden they are actually competitive. But you're going to be riding out 2 tiers of doing suboptimal damage and probably being benched before you even get an opportunity to get glaives. And you're also really limited to 1 spec. There's multiple specs as a rogue that are very good. There's even a tri-spec Hemo Brit build, which is basically more or less equal points across all 3 trees. But that is a support spec because you're buffing the physical damage, again, of your hunters and your hunters' pets, which that's the primary reason for the spec, but you will still do reasonable damage. Combat Swords is obviously the primary DPS spec, and Mutilators are probably 5 to 7% behind damage-wise, personal damage-wise. But PvE-wise, in my opinion, rogues are dog shit, and you don't really need them until tier 6 when you can start trying to give them glaives so they can keep up. Fake cutie.
Well, do you want me to talk about PvP or PvE?
I mean, if you've got anything else to add for PvE,
No,
then...
not really. Yeah, play combat and you're good to go.
Yeah. So go on, crack on with PvP then.
But yeah, PvP, you have to play sub because of Shadow Step, yeah. And as you can see on the monitor, most likely you get Cloak of Shadow. So like this ability is just so huge. Like you can, if you're about to die and you're playing against the caster, you can easily reset. Like you're fully dead by a Shadow Priest or Warlock, and bam, you pop this one. You can still reset the fight. And Rogue, if you look on most private servers, they always top 1 in 2s. Like Rogue and Resto Druid always the highest comp in 2s because they're so strong and they do so much damage. Even in like the worst gear, they do a lot of damage. And they're pretty much unkillable. You also get cheat death. So, I mean, overall, if you're if you're afraid of playing Rogue in PvE, but you still like your Rogue, just play PvP. Like you're gonna have such a great time, especially if you play with a Resto Druid.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add as far as PvP goes because he covered it for me.
Yeah, just apart from the fact that obviously most like intelligent like raid guilds are going to equally gear up like a future-proof raid comp for like 4 tier 5 tier 6 raid. So like obviously you will kind of hit like a noodle a little bit in tier 4 raids, but like raid groups will still want rogues and warriors because they need to like balance their teams and make them future-proof. There will be other guilds out there that just don't care and will just optimize their crap and make the whole raiding experience way too easy and way too boring. And then when they get into tier 5 content, they'll start like either kicking or benching DPS to make space for like more melee DPS. But I think most raid groups are going to make like a future-proof raid group. So again, like I wouldn't get too like shaky and scared about not ever getting a raid spot as a rogue.
Yeah, I agree. And without sounding too Care Bearish, there's the friendship comes into play a little bit, you know, as in these guilds at the moment in Classic are going to have probably 4 or 5 main rogues that, you know, they've built relationships up with in the guild. TBC's not going to come and they go, ta-da, off you go, we don't want you anymore. You know, so it is going to be like they'll accept the fact that those rogues are going to do slightly less damage to begin with, but ultimately they want to keep them in the guild because they've probably got friendships with them now. And I know that, as I say, that is a very Care Bear way of looking at things, but it's just what's going to happen. You know, if we had a main rogue in the guild that we like and, you know, has been loyal all the way through Classic, you're just going to accept the fact that they're probably going to be bottom of the damage for a while.
It doesn't matter that much anyway because it's not exactly world's first mythic run, is it?
Exactly.
Raids aren't going to be that difficult, and some mechanics like require melee. So,
oh yes, some absolutely do make fights easier. Well, like if you want to talk early on, Aran, for example, you know, is actually easier as a melee. The melee will be top of the damage because they just haven't really got to move as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have your Cloak of Shadow for like all the spells, so
Yeah, you
like
don't even need to run
you
out.
can avoid so much damage, which will like make it so easy for the healers. And Shadow Step, but yeah, you're gonna play combat, so no Shadow Step. But Cloak of Shadow will, yeah.
Yeah, Cloak of Shadow is going to make a big difference because you could just stick to the boss while everyone else is running around. You just use Cloak of Shadows on a 1 minute cooldown as well. I might add.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, as I say, rogues probably overall consensus not in an amazing place for PvE, but you still will keep up. You're not going to be top of the meters anymore. You'll do reasonable damage. But PvP, that's where your place is. Your place is in arenas, definitely. Which I believe brings us on to our last class. I'm sure this is our last one. So, the Warlock. Meta. I mean, you're playing a Warlock at the moment, so I'll let you kick off.
That doesn't mean anything, though. There's so much to learn about Warlock. Like, I'm only touching the surface. So, basically, the main reason why Warlock is so stupidly strong in TBC is because of it's basically the same reason it's so strong in Classic, is the demonic sacrifice deep destruction combo. Well, not deep destruction, but they obviously dip a toe into destruction and dip a toe into demonology to get that 15% shadow bonus from sacrifice now you succubus, and it's kind of like almost like a little bit of a cheat code, because it almost feels like Blizzard didn't really intend for people to do this, because obviously they probably intended for people to spec deeper into destruction, but it's kind of like a little cheeky little trick that you can use, and it just massively boosts your damage a lot. You obviously do have to get hit cap, because the only thing I do know is that Warlocks will, if they don't have enough hit rate gear, because one of the downsides of playing a Warlock is you don't have talents like Elemental Precision like Mages do, and the other one in the Arcane Tree, where they can increase the hit chance of their spells by reduce the resistances of their enemies, which in turn increases their hit chance. But Warlock have literally none of that apart from Suppression in the Affliction Tree, but that only works on Affliction spells. So low geared Warlocks, what they'll do is they'll spec deep into Affliction, dipping a toe into either Destruction or pretty much the build that you've got on the screen now, actually. That is the Deep Affliction build, which is the build that people are going to go for when they jump into TBC rating with not a lot of gear, because we have that increased hit chance with all of their damage, and one of the bonuses of dot damage is you can continue to do damage while you're moving around dealing with mechanics. And apart from that, I can't remember what else I was going to say. Oh yeah, obviously, Affliction, you probably always bring one Affliction Warlock to the raid, possibly. Just simply by the fact that because of the support they actually bring, because what they can do is they have slightly buffed Curse of Elements, and I'm pretty sure there's a few other curses that they can opt to get slightly more buffs for, like Curse of Weakness and things like that if they want to. So they provide like slightly better debuffs, so they'll slightly increase the damage of the entire raid by that buff to Curse of Elements. And they can also opt to talent into Improved Imp, which means slightly better Blood Pact, slightly better Fire Shield, but mainly want it there for the Blood Pact, and you will throw that Affliction Warlock into the tank group to, because basically like a way to cheese your way out of getting essentially 2 power word stamina buffs, whatever that spell's called. So you basically got 2 stamina buffs on the tank, and you stacked that with Kings and everything else. You can massively increase the health pool. Oh yeah, Commanding Shout. You've got Commanding Shout, Imp, Stamina buff, Kings. It just increases the warriors or whatever tank you've got, their health pool by like a country mile. So yeah.
Yeah,
so
got,
like,
stick all that on a feral tank. Look at the amount of health they're going to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, they are, for AoE, obviously they are kings. Absolute kings by a country mile. Because, yeah, Seed of Corruption is just so broken. And put a prop paladin and a warlock together in dungeons, and you're just going to storm through it.
Back in the day when I used to play Rated Battlegrounds, we used to play with a warlock. All he used to do was spam Seed of Corruption because it was so powerful. And imagine, like, when you're in a battleground, you don't really think of doing AoE damage. You'd rather do single target damage, get players killed. But you would just spam Seed of Corruption, and just everything would just die. It was that strong.
It's ridiculous.
You need to do single target damage.
Yeah, I know, and trust me, I know people on private servers who will not do. Well, I know prop paladins. Dr. Kelby in one, he absolutely rages if he hasn't got a warlock doing heroics with him, because he knows how powerful it is having a prop paladin and a warlock. You put 2 2 Warlocks, a prop Paladin, and then don't worry about anything else. It doesn't matter. Obviously, yeah, you're going to need a healer in that, but the 3 of them will just do so much AoE damage that everything melts. And there's fights where you need a Warlock. Or when I say you need, that might be a bit of a stretch, but definitely made easier. Again, if we're talking early, you want to get clearing Karazhan, Gruul, Magfarad, and all these things. You want to get clearing tier 4 as quick as possible. Like Ilhoof in Karazhan, I can't imagine doing it without a Warlock.
That'd be pretty difficult.
And Aran, to banish the elementals. They're just so useful.
We actually had to get a Warlock in. We just had to totally stop. Mage had to basically sit out of the raid. We had to get a Warlock in just to do Ilhoof because we just couldn't get past it.
Yeah, I think if we didn't have a Warlock in the group, we would just skip it. We wouldn't even bother trying. There's just no point. But yeah, their single target is amazing. The more you stack of them, the more damage they do because of improved Shadow Bolt. You want to buff your Warlocks and your Hunters, like we always say. So yeah, really strong in PvE. Are you back, Fake QT?
Yeah.
Go over your thoughts on PvE and then PvP while I dart away again for a sec.
Honestly, I haven't gotten much more to that because you talked about the most important spell I think in PvE, and that's simply Seed of Corruption. Shattered Halls and Hellfire, this dungeon, is gonna give Bralmar an Honorhold reputation, and one of the things you really have to focus on in the beginning is this reputation, because if you're exalted, you can get an epic sword, and if you play a Warlock, you should probably find another Warlock and a Mage and get ready and prepare for TBC with a Paladin, because you can farm rep so easily as this comp. But I would say you need a Frost Mage as well. Maybe 2 Frost Mages and a Warlock, or 2 Warlocks and a Mage to make this farm really good, because you need the slow from the Mage. But the Seed of Corruption, it just does way more damage than the Mage can actually do. So overall, Warlocks you should look forward to TBC, because they're gonna be so fun. And not you have your Soul Stone as well for the healer. All 5-man teams really want you in the beginning, I would say.
I suppose that's the only downside to Seed of Corruption is it generates so much aggro. So obviously having that Frost Mage slowing all the mobs down, so it takes a little bit more time for the mobs to move over to the Warlock, gives them a little bit of extra time gives the Paladin a little bit extra time to get the aggro back.
Yeah, true.
You don't want to just start Warlocks, because then the Warlock could just end up getting one-shotted, wouldn't they? If you're pulling aggro over time, I think you definitely need that Frost Mage in the group, smooth things out.
Yeah, that's why if the Paladin just run in, pull everything, then the Mage can Blizzard, and you get the slow effect, and then the Warlocks can use the Seed of Corruption, because even if they get the aggro, then there will be the slow effect on the mobs, which will give the Paladin time to actually rebuild the threat.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even bother trying to get the aggro back when I had a Mage. I would just taunt, and that was it. Just keep soft taunting, because the slow is so good. It on improved Blizzard. But yeah, I just wouldn't need to get the aggro back, because I'd just die before they even got to the Mage, and I would save a taunt for if they are gonna die. But most of the time, I just wouldn't even bother to get the threat aggro back, because I wouldn't need to.
Yeah, so I mean, Warlocks are in a really good place, aren't they? Overall, I mean, PvP. I don't know. Have you touched on PvP?
No, not really.
I mean.
No.
They're ridiculous, aren't they? Resto Druid Warlock is just awesome.
Always has been.
I mean, it's just the pressure that they can put on multiple targets for me. That's the majority of your Warlocks in PvP are going to be Affliction, and it's just the pressure that they can put on multiple targets. They're amazing, but also SLSL, so that's Siphon Life, Soul Link, which means they're a bloody tank. They're going to take less damage than a warrior in most cases, but also have all these quite powerful dots. They're going to lose Unstable Affliction and some other bits and bobs, but nothing that's really that detrimental to sort of put pressure in a team rather than one target. I mean, my experience. I got Gladiator in one season. That was with a Warlock. So I was Resto Druid and he was SLSL Warlock.
There's multiple different specs you can play as well. You don't have to just play that spec. Because obviously, If you remember all those like Drake Dog videos, he used to spec Deep in Destruction, because there's actually quite a few cheeky, sneaky, unappreciated talents in Destruction which are really, really good for PvP. For instance, like Soul Leech, that gives you health back whenever you cast like a big fat Shadow Ball or Incinerate and all that kind of thing, and you can daze. There's a chance for you to daze your targets and things like, and stun targets as well, stuff like that on all your destruction spells.
You get backlash, don't you? You get backlash in TBC, so you get the instant incinerate.
It's the wavy hand, you can see it there. I'm pretty sure it's there.
Yeah, next to conflagrate.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, but I think all the specs are strong. I mean, yeah, all of them are strong. SL is probably going to be the most used. I think, and a deep Affliction build can work, and like you say, a deep Destro build can work. I think ultimately it probably comes down to what your partner is, don't it, more than anything else?
I think that is more of a BG spec Destruction, to be honest, but yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna mix Demo and Affliction, like a mix of this 50-50 pretty much, I think it's gonna be. For arenas. But yeah, overall, like, you will have a lot of mana, you will have a huge health pool, a lot of survivability for PvP, and the damage is just insane, yeah. And if you play with the rest of Druid, it's gonna be huge.
You almost will play with Succubus as well, so you got that Seduce.
Yeah, Seduce into Soulfire is quite a big one that people like doing. Is that in arenas maybe not so much, but definitely duels and sort of open world PvP.
Yeah. But each and every pet just has its own great utility, like the Fell Hunter as well. But doesn't the Fell Hunter like dispel?
Yeah, dispel and silence. Yeah. So that's like so insane.
Yeah, you have Warlocks use you can have Warlocks use the Fell Hunters on Gruul, on Hiking Mulgar before Gruul, but you are banning, you're enslaving the Fell Hunters that they've got, but they do the same abilities.
I remember that.
I mean, yeah, overall, again, Warlock, just if anybody is not sure what class to main in TBC, I think if I could play a Warlock, as in I've never actually been able to, like there's always that one class that you just can't get into. You can't just, it don't matter how powerful it is. It could be the best class in the entire expansion for PvP, PvE, all of that, but you just don't enjoy playing it. Warlock is that one for me. It's that one that I don't enjoy playing, but I just wish I did, because I probably would if I tried to really stick to it. It would be probably tons of fun, because you just got three so different specs and a fun class. You've got pets, you've got self heals and mana drains, and you've got everything. Literally, you've got everything as a Warlock.
The reason why I don't like it is probably because you weren't like one of those emo kids at school. So I think this is like the perfect class for anyone who's like a bit of an emo kid at school.
No, I'm emo now. I missed it when I was a kid. It took me like 20 years to catch up.
Fair enough.
But I think that is it. We're done. That was the last class, I believe. I will just check, but no, we are definitely done. Overall, just real brief recap. Everybody go Hunter, go Warlock. Don't play a Rogue. If you play a Rogue at the moment, delete it. If you play a Warrior and you don't want to tank, delete it. I think is that the gist we're trying to give out to people? I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not.
Well, you can say it like this: all the classes that's like really bad in raiding content in Classic is gonna be really good in TBC. Hunters, you never see them that much in raiding. Like, people don't stack these. All of a sudden, they become good. All of a sudden, Druids actually don't have to heal. Same with priests and stuff like that. Rogues, who is really OP, is all of a sudden not gonna be as OP. And you won't see as many Fury Wars, so it's gonna be completely different, the raiding experience in TBC. So, like, if you play a class that isn't really populated right now, you should expect it to be completely different in TBC.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say, like, Warrior and Rogue and all those classes, they're not going to be on the same level as, for instance, like an Enhancement Shaman or a Rep Paladin in Classic right now, where they're quite literally only about 30% as powerful. I think they're going to be 20% it's 20 to like 40% less powerful than the Warlocks and Hunters, but they're not going to be detrimentally terrible in comparison.
Yep, totally. I mean, look, we're going to end it there anyway. It's probably been a little bit longer than we probably wanted it to be, but I hope you've enjoyed listening no matter where you are, Spotify, iTunes. So, bit of a plug to everyone. Yeah, it's on anywhere you can physically get a podcast. It's on YouTube. Obviously, you've got Metagoblin. If you don't follow Metagoblin on Twitch, make sure you follow him. If you don't subscribe to him on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to him. Same for Fake QT. Fake QT, obviously on YouTube. Go sub. Follow him on YouTube. He's currently on the part of the Flame Lash movement, trying to repopulate that server. So, a lot of good things. Don't worry about following me. There's no point. I'm an idiot. But thanks, both of you. Again, obviously, it's been great. Really looking forward to next week. Next week's going to be an interesting topic. We'll take that offline. But ultimately, everybody's going to want to come back and see it because it's going to be hot.
All right, thank you.
Cheers, Meta. Cheers, QT.
Yeah, have a great Sunday, everyone. And see you next Sunday, hopefully.
Unless I'm dead, you will. Right, cool. We're done. That's a wrap.